I'm Shannon.
And I'm Lisa.
And KK's here too. And you're listening to Blacktivities,
a celebration of all things Black.
Black culture, Black history,
Black perspectives, and Black panache.
Celebrating our Blackness doesn't mean exclusion.
Everybody's invited, but you got to come in and have a seat.
So let the Blacktivities begin. Hey y'all, the full squad is back. I'm Shannon here with the gals, Mona Lisa the poet, and Karen, aka KK, my beautiful Blacktivities co-host. Today's topic is kind of serious. Sometimes we're silly and sometimes we got to talk about some serious stuff, but it's all for the culture. I'm an educator, so today we are comparing and contrasting. We're comparing and contrasting the crack epidemic to the opioid crisis. My heart goes out to anybody out there who's listening who's been affected by either of these things, because I know that they have messed up a lot of people's lives. Before we start, I want to remind you about this pop-up shop we got going. The Blacktivities shop will only be open for a couple of months, but we have some logo tees and some other tees relating to things that we've talked about on the show. Some of you might like to start your day off with a subtle reminder that these people can kiss your Black panache. And we got a mug for you as you sip your tea or your coffee. When we talk about Black panache, we're talking about that little flair that we as Black people add on to everything, that little seasoning, the extra seasoning. So if you love Blacktivities, go check out our Blacktivities on the pop-up shop site. It's linked in the show notes. Okay, so the big facts might be a little longer today because there was a lot of research that went into it. So let's get these big facts going. So the crack epidemic, we'll start with that. It became a thing in the early 1980s when dealers figured out crack was easy to make and could be sold in smaller portions to more people. It was first found in Miami, where some Caribbean immigrants taught some teens how to make it, and they introduced it to other parts of the country. It became an epidemic for several reasons. One, it was cheaper than regular cocaine, and it also had or has an immediate effect, and it's highly addictive. In 82 through 85, the number of cocaine users increased by 1.6 million people. And the effects of using the drug caused ER visits due to its use to increase 4 times over between 84 and 87. 80% of crack users were Black back then. I think I saw a stat that said it was 84% in 2000, so still disproportionately affects Black people. Now, there were a series of causes and effects that led to the passing of the Anti-Drug Abuse Act in 1986 that we talked about a few episodes ago. The first thing was Ronald Reagan's industrial policy that promoted offshoring jobs and laying off U.S. workers. This led to the closing of plants because manufacturers wanted cheaper labor, but a lot of Black people worked in these plants. He also went anti-union, which disproportionately affected Black people because they were overrepresented in unions. There was a power shift from the workers, which were typically us, to the companies, which was typically not us. We're typically not the boss. And it left a lot of Black people jobless and contributed to the racial wealth gap. That racial wealth gap led to an increase in drug dealing for Black people because it was something that people could do to provide for their families that didn't require a lot of skills and made good money. So there was an increased demand for crack because it was highly addictive, and an increase in dealers fighting for customers, and that led to an increase in violence. Basically, folks got scared. And a war on drugs was initiated, and then came the 5-year minimum sentence for 5 grams of crack or 500 grams of powdered cocaine. So that caused the incarceration rates to double. One stat said that 1 in every 4 African-American males aged 20 to 29 was either incarcerated or on probation or parole by 1989. When we talk about the opioid crisis, that was declared a public health emergency in 2017. And they describe it in waves. So wave 1 actually started in the 90s when they started seeing a rise in deaths due to prescription drug overdoses. Wave 2 was between 2010 and 2013, where they started seeing a spike in heroin-related deaths. And then wave 3 started in 2013, and it's still going. That's due to the rise in synthetic opioids like the fentanyl that you hear about all the time these days. They said that it was exacerbated by the pandemic. So the causes of the opioid crisis include Big Pharma and their marketing techniques, marketing their painkillers as safe and non-addictive, also a lack of oversight in drug approval processes and prescribing practices, and doctors over-prescribing medications and then people getting hooked after like surgeries or other medical procedures that they had to have. Also, there was an increase in heroin and synthetic opioid use, and those are some of the most addictive drugs that exist. In 2016, white victims made up almost 80% of the deaths from opioid overdoses. The government has set aside billions and billions of dollars dedicated to addressing the opioid crisis and mental health. And members of Congress say that they learned from the crack epidemic, and that's why they're treating the opioid crisis like a medical issue instead of a criminal issue like they treated the crack epidemic. However, some representatives don't want to rectify the damage that the war on drugs caused because then they said it would look like they're not being tough, they're being easy on criminals because they're releasing criminals from jail, which goes away from the whole tough on crime message. But that is the big facts.
So much good information there. Thank you for that.
Yeah. Do you believe politicians when they say that they're handling the opioid crisis differently because they learned from the crack epidemic and how they handled that?
Yeah, they're handling it differently, all right. That's because the opiate crisis, I feel like more and more people, it's putting money in their pockets. So is it wrong to say, and if it's wrong, let me know it's wrong, that the opioid crisis, again, yeah, it comes from a medical standpoint, but it's like a little bit more protected. And there was a lot of people that is involved in this. There's a lot of people where it lined their pockets versus drugs and crack that was bought in. I mean, yeah, it benefited some people, but it didn't benefit the same way. More money was made off of the opiates and Oxycontin and the different things versus the crack. Okay. And then also one of the facts you gave where it said 80% of the victims that have lost their lives or, you know, was subject to that were Caucasian. And you got to think why were majority were Caucasian? And that's because when we go to the doctor, maybe we're not taken as seriously when it comes to pain. Whereas them, it was easier. They had that connection where they could just go and say, yeah, I'm just hurting. And the doctor just go ahead and write it, where we actually have to prove our leg damn near hanging on by a ligament. And before we even get that. And again, that's just the difference between the two. So, but yeah.
That's a good point.
But yeah.
But also, I think we don't typically have the insurance.
That too.
Either.
That too. Yes. Mm-hmm.
That's a great point. In fact, this is where when you bring up the conversation about privilege allows people to be seen through a different lens. So if I go in and I say I'm needing something for my depression or whatever, and they offer me something, I'm not seen through the same lens. That's why we have this compassionate lens for the opioid crisis versus the criminal activity for the crack epidemic, which took so many Black fathers out of the home, fathers and brothers incarcerated them, which, as we know, is just an extension of slavery. So it was criminalizing them, and, in a de facto way, making them into modern day slaves who, and I must say, I live in a state where marijuana is legal, but the same people who are making millions, and I do mean millions. It is I want to say like a $200 billion, like there is so much money involved in marijuana here. And there are people like me who look like us who don't have access because when the information was being disseminated, they didn't get it because, God forbid you have a felony and are Black or had some dealings with marijuana in the past. You can't get into the industry. That is reserved for people who are special, people who are seen through a different lens. So I'm circling back to that. And that's the privilege that these people have. So it is seen very differently.
Yeah. Yeah. I think there are a lot of factors in that. I think maybe for some people, maybe they're looking at it differently. But I think that there's more factors than just, oh, we did the crack epidemic wrong, so let us treat this different. I think there's way more factors than that. Do you think, because as we've been discussing, like crack ruined a lot of families. Generations of families are messed up because either a family member got hooked or ended up in jail or dead or whatever. Do you think that the government could even begin to rectify the damage that the crack epidemic caused Black families?
Why should they? I mean, why should they rectify it? What's to gain by them rectifying wrongs done to 13% of the population or whatever we are? We can't even get reparations for 400, years of slavery. So what's the benefit to them of rectifying it when in fact they can just focus on caring for those who look like them using a different approach to them? There's no benefit. It doesn't benefit them to rectify anything.
So you're saying you don't think that they'll even try because what is the point for them?
What is the point? This country wasn't designed for us. It's one of these things where we are here, we were brought over here, but we have very much overstayed our welcome here. And so why do anything to benefit these people that are just an intrusion at this point? So, and that's the way. I'm not discounting any of our contributions or anything else, but when it comes to the structure and the way things are done, this wasn't designed for us to succeed. This wasn't designed for our benefit. So why does it matter whether things are rectified on our behalf? And that includes the drug epidemic, incarceration, reparations, any of that. It doesn't benefit those with power.
Lisa, you agree with that?
Yes, I totally agree with it. Like, when have they ever came back and said that, okay, well, we apologize, we're sorry, let's fix this? Like, it's not. It's all about, again, it's money. It's money. It's how they can benefit. It's how they can stay on top. And as much as I would love to go into conspiracy theories on these, there's plenty of nights I've been up on YouTube watching different videos. I'm not going to go into that, but it's impossible to say that, hey, we've messed up, or hey, let's fix this situation. And it's easy to get on TV and have a press conference and say, oh, this happened and we're going to, we're crack down on the war on crack and methamphetamines, like different things. But it's all about just being there, saying they're doing it, and then what really is happening when it comes to figuring it out. So, and something else I want to point out too, crackheads back then, you got to think the crackheads, I don't know if you've ever been around crackheads. Crackheads were strong. Okay. Like crackheads were strong. They smoke crack, but baby, they was out there in 100 degrees washing cars. Like the drug was different. You know what I mean? Versus how is somebody on the opioids, you see them out there and they just be out there just laying on the ground. They can't move. They can't do nothing. So, and then how they came about it, it's just, I don't know. It's just different. All of it is different. It really is. It's different, but it's hard to expect for anyone or the government to even say that they're doing something about it when they're not. In reality, they're not.
Yeah. I mean, there have been people who have talked about trying to, let certain people out of jail for these minor drug offenses that they just got years and years and years because of the laws that were put into place. But even if they were to do that, I just don't know if they could ever do anything that would make up for the damage that it caused Black families, because like we're talking generational trauma from being in one parent households or even raised by grandparents, because it could have affected both parents. One could be in jail, one could have passed away or something like that. And there were financial consequences because of that. And for generations having to struggle financially, having to struggle with the trauma that comes from having a parent incarcerated or losing a parent young, or having to not even really having a parent because that parent is hooked on drugs.
Right.
They didn't get the values that they needed to get, and they're having to overcome that. So I just don't know if, no matter what they did, I mean, it's good for a family member to be able to come home earlier than they thought. But I don't know that that can ever rectify all of the damage that it caused.
If it was all fair and the government, Congress, they said that they were going to crack down on it, they would be fair about it and give the same doctors and pharmacies and all of them, give them the same time, especially doctors that's writing prescriptions that was not even needed. You know what I mean? So if they were being fair, give them the same time that they would give people that had like first offenses that got caught with it. And they give them 20 and 30 years. And that was their first offense. So doctors, and I'm just saying this, yeah, they supposed to be held at a different level, like an upper level, because we're trusting them with our health. We're trusting them with our lives. But they feel like we're nothing, and they want to sit here and write all of these people, all of these prescriptions, knowing darn well that they don't need it. That's negligence. So why not? Like, hold them to the same standard. And that's not fair if you go into this doctor's office and you look at their records and you see that they wrote out so many prescriptions and it's not needed. If anything, somebody has surgery, just give just a little enough just to get them through. Why are you keep refilling this pain medicine? You know what I'm saying? Or this, like, why would you keep doing that? And you know for a fact this person don't need it, but you know if you keep doing it, you're going to get like a little, payout for it. Okay. So hold them to the same standard y'all hold the drug dealers. Pretty much.
Absolutely. Because you definitely see that privilege when, what was that company that they put on trial?
Purdue.
Is it Purdue Pharma?
For Oxycontin.
There were no real consequences. Nope. Haven't really been any consequences for them. They still get to keep all the money that they made.
Was it $4 or $5 billion when they were well worth more than that? And when they didn't even, they put it on an installment plan over a certain amount of years. And I want to say the first 2 years of them making a payment, they had triple, quadruple made that back, and the investments and other things that they had. So it didn't even put a dent in their pockets. But that was supposed to have been, they're like, here, this is the slap on the wrist. Here you go. And that's all they got. And even though they paid it, they were still doing it.
And they're still wealthy.
Oh, yes.
Like, it's like, here, just take this little change and y'all leave me alone.
Pretty much. Pretty much. I say that's because it was a lot of more people behind the scenes that was getting money put in their pockets or had promises made to them. And it's
interesting when you talk about this company, right? You talk about this company, what they were able to do and what they weren't able to do. And then, the impact or lack of, but we're missing something way far out oftentimes. And yes, people do have addictive personalities, but when you talk about the doctors and holding them responsible, we talk about insurance and the fact that we may or may not have that. There's a few things to consider. The United States does not have universal health care the way we could have, because the whole reason we don't have it goes back to the fact of when we had an opportunity to implement these things, it was refused because the people in power didn't want Black folks to have free health care. That's one. That's an issue. So now in our country, everybody's just scrambling because nobody really has it in a true form like other countries. And then in addition to that, the thing we're leaving off is yes, people write inappropriate prescriptions and whatnot, and there's not the same level of accountability. But we also haven't considered the fact that a lot of people are self-medicating because as a country, we refuse to address mental health care in a tangible way. So we see a lot of people out on the street, nodding out, homeless, schizophrenic, talking to themselves, all of the things, and they use drugs to self-medicate because they don't have the insurance and access that I just talked about. They don't have it. So I don't have insurance. I know something's wrong in my head, but I can take this and feel somewhat normal for a minute, and then I get addicted to it, and I don't have benefits. Benefits weren't meant for me. See what I'm saying? And we refuse to address mental health at all in a tangible way. We can talk about universal health care and the Affordable Care Act, which did pass under the Obama administration, but we still have yet to see it, particularly in our community, because we were taught just talk to Jesus and he'll fix it all. And that's not it. That's part and parcel, but that's not the full realm of it. We need to embrace the fact that just like if a person with cancer or diabetes or whatever they have needs external resources that God made possible, we need to accept that too. Just like he made, cancer medications and treatments and all that. The same thing with mental health. This is an issue that also crosses that road as well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You just said a word, KK.
You did. You really did. And to add on to what she said about how people with mental disability or mental health issues, they can't get that help. But you also got to think they quick to lock them up, though. They'll put them in prison. That's another body in there where they can make money off of that extra body that's put in there. They are always in jail. It's always something. And it's so sickening to where this person has a mental health issue, but you lock them up for loitering or something stupid instead of taking them somewhere where they can get help. But they can't take them there because it's funding behind it. And they got to find the funding, but there is no funding behind it. But they have funding when it comes to prisons and the jail. So that's a wow. That is really wow.
And I question if a lot of the places that they could take them are even adequate for what they need. Yeah.
That part.
Well, on that note, Lisa, what's your piece today?
All right. Let me go on and get it ready. I want to say it first. I'm going to say it first. And the last thing I say, that's going to be the title of it. Okay. The last line. All right. Y'all ready? Hey, sweet thing. Come here. Let me talk to you. Let me show you the world and be your light. Sip on this. You like pearls, huh? Say your kid needs some shoes. Want to ask where they daddy at, but you haven't seen your own, so it's not important to me. Try this. It's strong, huh? Don't worry, that cough is normal. I'm just trying to show you the world. Trying to be your healer. You gonna let me? Don't know why your mama don't like me though. She should understand your struggle. Wasn't she there before? You have a lighter on you? Look, I love you far more than any man could abandon you. Just trust me. I am who you want me to be. I'm the guide to your existence. Don't forget me. My name is Tim, and I'm your pusher man.
Okay.
And I wrote that one while we were waiting on KK to change shirts, by the way. When I told you I was ready, that's what I just wrote.
Did it take me that long?
No. I mean, that's how I am. When I get started, I just start flowing. Seriously.
That's a gift.
Yeah.
All right. Well,
Definitely a gift.
it's time to call the culture. What is your call to action for the culture?
My call to action is mental health is serious. It is something that we should not ignore, shed a light on, and do not make anyone feel a certain type of way if they express to you they're having an issue. Resources is out there. Don't be afraid to take them. There's plenty of free resources. And then also when it comes to any type of drug, whatever choice that you have people around you choose, you do not have to be a part of that. Be aware of the circle that you are in and be firm on if that's not what you're about, then don't let that be about you. So that's all I got.
KK, what you got?
My call to action is for people wherever you live to become active in terms of your community and legislation and changes around mental health and resources. You know, the disparity is there between the opioid crisis and the crack epidemic. Even the name, Opioid Crisis, Crack Epidemic, that speaks volumes. And so even with that and how we were painted back then when it was at its peak, we need to be active in our communities and find out what's available to us. Because what happens is we have police officers and first responders who are not familiar with how to deal with people in mental health crisis. When people are under the influence of drugs, there are not necessarily the correct opportunities out there to resolve those issues. So I would encourage that in every city, in every state, we try to, and even in rural places, in addition to just the police being called out, we need to have teams. They're called different things in different STAR teams and so forth, so that when there are people in crisis, there are professionals who are called directly so that they can deal with that. Police are called to eliminate a threat. If you call the police because someone is having a mental health crisis, there's a possibility that person will be eliminated. If you live somewhere and you have fought for legislation and resources that help you to fight and protect those who have mental health concerns, they are more likely to live. Become active. Protect your families and friends in that way, because there's a distinct difference and we need to act on it in a tangible way.
Yes. I'm calling the culture to work on healing. Things like the crack epidemic have caused a lot of generational trauma, and we can't depend on anybody else to help us. We got to start with us. So we've been proponents on the show of healing that generational trauma. I would venture to say that everybody has it. Our ancestors were enslaved. So there's definitely something in every family that needs healing. And our generation can break the cycle of trauma by healing ourselves. Therapy doesn't have to be your route, but it does help a lot of people. Don't be afraid to do it. Do what needs to be done. I'm also calling the culture to click the plus in Apple Podcast or the subscribe button in YouTube, and then leave us a 5-star review telling us what you like about the show. so we can continue to do more of whatever that is. You help us improve. But until we meet again,
King and queens keep doing big things. Let's go.